Today we're going to be talking about isosceles and equilateral triangles. Some of the information that we covered here is going to sound really familiar because I've actually already introduced some of it to you as we went through these previous lessons. So first, let's talk about what is an isosceles triangle. Okay. So an isosceles triangle is a triangle that has to have two or more congruent sides. Okay. And so that means that every equilateral triangle is also an isosceles triangle. The best name for an equilateral triangle is equilateral because it gives you more information. But if they were to ask you, is an equilateral triangle an isosceles triangle, the answer would be yes, because an isosceles triangle is two or more congruent sides. Also, we have some important pieces of information that we need to know about this. And so these two sides that are the same, these are called the legs of the triangle. Okay. In this case, if I give it a name here, triangle ABC, then the two legs would be side AC, over here, okay, and side AB. And that's because those two sides are the sides that are congruent. That means that they are the legs of the triangle. Next, we're going to have what's called the vertex angle. In this case, that is going to be angle A up here. This is our vertex angle. And the vertex angle on an isosceles triangle is always created by the two legs. So you're going to look and you're going to identify the legs first. And once you've identified those, you're going to look and see which angle is created by those two legs. That will be your vertex angle. Okay. The two angles that are across from the legs. So we have a leg here, and the angle across from it is this angle. And you have a leg over here, and the angle across from it is this angle. And these two angles, in this case, angle C and angle B, these are going to be called your base angles. And another easy way to see that is going to be, you have three sides on a triangle. Two of the sides are going to be the legs. This third side is referred to as the base. And so the base angles are the angles that are created, at least in halfway created, by the base. Because you'll notice the base is this half of this angle, and the base over here is half of this angle. Okay? So let's go over it again. The two legs are the two congruent sides of the triangle. The vertex angle is the angle that is created by the two legs. The base angles are the angles that are across from the legs, or you can remember them as the angles that are created halfway at least by the base, which is that third side of the triangle. Okay. So now we want to talk about what do we know about these isosceles triangles. Okay, so I'm going to start us over again here. And so our first one is going to be the isosceles triangle theorem. Remember, we abbreviate theorem THM. And so this theorem says that if you have two sides of a triangle that are congruent, okay, then you're going to know that the angles that are opposite them are congruent. So that means that those base angles here and here, because they are the angles that are opposite the sides, that means those angles have to be congruent also. That's one of our rules. This is the isosceles triangle theorem. If you have two sides are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides are congruent. Now, this also works backwards. So if you have, we also have the converse of the isosceles triangle theorem. And remember, converse just means that we're switching the if and the then on that statement. Okay? So this time we're saying, if you know that these two angles are congruent, then you're going to know that the sides across from them have to be congruent, and therefore that you have an isosceles triangle. Okay, so the converse starts with, if you know these two angles down here are congruent, then you know the sides across from them are congruent, and therefore you're going to have an isosceles triangle. Okay. Next we're going to talk about equilateral triangles. Okay. And we have two theorems for these. The first one is going to be that if you have an equilateral triangle, it's an equilateral triangle if and only if it is also equiangular. So we talked about this briefly before. So we said if it's equilateral, then it also has to be equiangular. Okay. The next theorem that we're going to talk about says that if you have an equilateral triangle, then all of its angles have to equal 60 degrees. And again, that's one we talked about before as well. So if you have an equilateral triangle, then all of its angles will equal 60 degrees. Okay. So there's not a whole lot of new information here. A lot of your questions in this section are going to involve things like they're going to tell you this is an equilateral triangle, and they might say, okay, if this is an equilateral triangle, then they want you to solve for x, right? And they'll give you an equation over here and a number over here, and they want you to solve for x. Or they might tell you it's equilateral, and then they might give you this angle here is 5y plus 10, and they might want you to solve for y. And don't be fooled, you have to remember, if it's equilateral, that means that this angle equals 60. So you would have to come down here and say 5y plus 10 equals 60 and solve for y. Okay? So don't be fooled by thinking that they didn't give you enough information. And don't be fooled by not reading the information that they do provide you, because they might tell you it's equilateral in words, like in the directions, or they might tell you it's equilateral with the little tick marks, like I have on here. Little tick marks. So they have a lot of ways of giving you that information. Also, if you have an isosceles triangle, they might tell you this is an isosceles, right? And it could be in the words up here, so don't forget to read your words. And then they might tell you this angle is is 30 degrees, and they might ask you, what is this angle? And you just have to tell them. And so they're going to expect you to be able to figure out, if this is the vertex angle, and they, again, might give you that information on the picture, or they might give it to you in words. They might tell you which two sides are congruent in the picture or in words. But either way, you have to remember, oh, these two base angles here, they're congruent. So if this one is 30, then this angle here, it's also 30 degrees. Okay? So it's not a whole lot of really challenging information. It's just a lot of information. And that's why I've been trying to give you little pieces here and there, so it's not quite so much right here at the end. Okay? So thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a lovely afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow in class. Goodbye.